What was it like growing up in the UK as a British Nigerian?
I think it's a bit more than just being Nigerian. Like being a black person growing up in the UK, I think you naturally start off with a disadvantage behind your white counterparts. My parents always said you have to do twice as well to get half as far as those guys. So really work hard.
Even my granddad from Ghana told me it wasn't twice, it was 100 times more. And, even I'm not black, he just said you gotta work super, super hard. What are some of the other key cultural things you grew up with that you think stand out as a Nigerian? I mean, education, you've mentioned.
Don't speak bad about anyone, be generous, don't be stingy. Just good morals, I think.
As a black Brit, how was that as a kid? Do you have any memories? Were there difficulties and challenges associated with that?
Having the pressure to do well at school and education, I'm sure every black Nigerian can relate. Obviously, getting home if you didn't do well. I think there were 3 careers: doctor, lawyer, or finance. I came from a medical background, so my dad was a doctor. On my mum's side, all her nieces and nephews studied medicine.
One of the most educated immigrant groups are American Nigerians. And in the UK, more than British Indians and South Africans, Nigerians are most likely to have at least one qualification. Where do you think that comes from, though?
Naturally, as Nigerians, we're really proud people and we're always doing something. I think if you look to any country in the world, you always find one of us everywhere. We're everywhere. I think that's where it comes from, just that attitude to kind of get out there and do something with your life, not just sit around and, wait for things to fall on your lap.
You're an investment banker now. How do you think your parents and the Nigerian culture specifically shaped that path for you?
Naturally, people in that industry are hard workers, so it felt natural that I would probably end up here.
From such a young age, you were instilled with that self-belief. I think it's very powerful that despite the odds of coming from different backgrounds, being black, there is prejudice, there are these things. But despite that, failure was never an option, it sounds like.
You're already at a disadvantage. You're already facing that barrier, so you have to be even better than those people you're competing up against.
I know there's a lot of people born in the UK who have probably got a lot of talent, but the self-belief isn't there for whatever reason, right? Whereas I noticed with a lot of West Africans, especially Nigerians, they're aware of those things, but they're just gonna keep working. We met at LSE. It was that orientation kind of drinks event.
We met in the pub.
We both kind of looked
in the pub.
I remember we both kind of looked around and there's a certain demographic around us. The majority demographic was not necessarily like us. But you're very good at that. I know you're very adaptable, code switching. Could you speak about growing up with that? Just being conscious about changing around maybe West Africans, then with Brits, white Brits.
Talk about code switching and talking black. I feel like because I've been around people that weren't my skin color for so long, it's like I can't talk black anymore. I'm
But what is talking black?
Slang, pidgin. It seems like there's almost a disconnect between me and everyone else. When people hear me talk, it's weird, why do you sound like that kind of thing? But because I've been not around many black people or not enough, it's kind of, desensitized my association with particular cultures or particular ways of saying things. And I know you talked about, being in a different environment to all those other people, white British. They've got there on the strength of their connections or through family or, just being privileged. They have a certain way of speaking. One of the things that struck me when I first joined was the amount of languages that people spoke about. You are one of those people who can speak multiple languages. And I was like, oh, wow, this is impressive. These people are well-traveled, obviously very smart.
When you say speak black, my mind goes to speaking Yoruba, Igbo, or Ewe, different languages. Whereas in the UK context, speaking black is not about the mother tongues and indigenous languages of whether they're from Africa or Creoles. It's your wagwan black, you're cool, yeah? It's different, innit?
I can speak like that, but that's not my first go-to. I just feel like me speaking now is just me speaking normally. But obviously, if you're in those countries, Nigeria, or, you'd expect to speak in pidgin and your mother tongue. But I wouldn't even say I'd really do that much. I'm just me. I don't really, and maybe that leans into the fact that I'm a little bit disconnected from my culture. Some people would say that.
For some reason, the way the media presents being a black man in the UK, you are expected, some people, to speak in a certain way, dress in a certain way. And that's what I think on Evolve. We want to say, okay, that is a valid culture, but it's not. That doesn't represent black. Yeah. Hip hop does not represent black, it's much broader than one subset.
There are black people in finance. There are black people in STEM. There are black people in good positions, good corporate jobs, but few and far between. There's not a lot. And because there's not a lot, that area, that demographic of people is really underrepresented. It's not portrayed. Even with all these kind of TV shows you see on Netflix, Top Boy, Supercell, they show one side of things. I would like to see a show that portrays Black people in corporate jobs. Yeah. Or how, a different side of things, something fresh. Because it would be interesting, to give people a different sense of what it's like, the microaggressions we face, the issues we faced.
Growing up with Ghanaian family, for me, when I thought of Black, it was educated people, discipline, all those same things you mentioned. That's what I think of Black. And I think of you, my Black friends and colleagues, well-spoken, educated, smart people who are firm in their African or Caribbean identity as well. But yeah, I remember when I first met you, your IG was Niger Boy, so... So that, you can say what you want about being disconnected, but it's possible to be proud and maintain that Nigerian heritage and also be British. Is that a big thing you think about or not?
Yeah, it is. I mean, I am Nigerian. Sometimes within me, I'm kind of like, am I Black British? Am I Black Nigerian? Sometimes there's this disconnect because of how I speak, and people on the outside looking in, they might not associate someone who's Black from Nigeria or parents are from Nigeria speaking like that. Like, a lot of people can speak their mother tongue, but I can't.
You must know some words for the viewers from Nigeria.
If you wanted to greet someone and show a sign of respect, you would say Degwa.
Jack, Degwa.
Verondo.
Tode is good night. Wada. Water. How far?
How far? Are they, What is it? Are they good? So when you meet Nigerians, like from Nigeria, not British raised Nigerians, how do they receive you? Because we've spoken about like racism in England. How are you received among Africans from Africa?
They always try to speak to me in pidgin or just, they'll be welcoming. I think with your name and the way you speak, sometimes they'll be able to know, or from your facial expressions or the way you look, some people will be able to tell.
It's not like some kind of barrier that you feel with them, or is there?
I wouldn't say so. Maybe because I haven't been to Nigeria as much. There's some cultural things that I should probably know that they think I should probably know that I don't know.
Such as?
I guess maybe some of the pidgin, some of the places that in Niger, Lagos, Abuja, some of the places there that you go to that I wouldn't know of because I haven't been as well for a while now.
Can you comment on what you think Black culture is in the UK?
That's a tough question because, there's so many layers to it. One thing about being Black and what we kind of hold dear is like, we're very protective of what's ours. So I'm sure you've heard the term culture colonizers, or is that the right term? Culture vultures. Yeah. For example, Afrobeats. Like, that's a very Black thing. We've got loads of Nigerian artists, loads of Ghanaian artists. When white DJs do the Afrobeat kind of thing, sometimes when they get a lot of praise, we kind of cross our eyebrows differently to when a Black person gets the praise. Like, it's different sometimes. We like to support our own Black businesses, Black music, grime music, any Black artists, we obviously want to support them, see them do well. If there's a Nigerian artist performing, our group of people, our Nigerians, we go and support that artist. Or you might get people from different cultures, Ghanaian or different African backgrounds come and support as well. So I think we're inclusive, but, sometimes some of us are quite protective. This is our own.
What you mentioned about culture vultures, for me, is quite interesting because obviously I'm not Black, but I've always vibed with Black people, West Africans, and I've never been accused of like when I was young, white people accused me of being a fake Black person. I've never had Black people ever react weirdly for me appreciating their food, their culture, their music, because it comes out of a place of appreciation. It's the M. effect. I don't know if you've seen that artist, M. Bosiname Ed. He's a white artist from Kent who speaks in full patois when he makes music. In Jamaica, he's got a lot of support and he spends a lot of time out there. But a lot of white people comment, or Black British saying, he's stealing their culture or whatever. I think appreciation goes a long way, as long as you say, I'm not trying to pretend that this is my culture and that jollof rice is mine.
But we feel like you should stick to your lane, and this is like this comes back to what I said before. This is ours, so we want to see our people do well in that field. We want to see us, like, we feel like you guys could do well in so many other things. Why are you coming into our space? That's how some people feel, a lot of people actually. So when that person gets a recognition, it's like, we would rather someone else get it.
The thing is, it's Jamaicans giving him the recognition.
Yeah, I mean, I see your point.
We went to a Nigerian restaurant in Seoul recently. Shout out to our brother Murphy. He saw that we were appreciating his food. He's a black Nigerian from Nigeria. He was so happy to see people appreciating it. He came and paid the meal.
I think showing an appreciation for stuff is very different.
Have you been able to share your culture with others? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, when Hakeem came to my house like four years ago, there was jollof rice on the table, chicken, that was all Nigerian cuisine. So that's what I eat. So by force, that's what they have to eat. So yeah, I have when I can, when I feel comfortable to do so. Because sometimes not everyone is receptive to it, or it might seem foreign.
You touched on a really important point earlier. Black people excelling in athletics, and even you mentioned the word cool and trendy. Growing up in the UK, similar times, the media often shows cool and black. Athletics black, we think of that. Whereas from a South Asian perspective, we were never really portrayed as like the cool people, but then
Are you always good in school?
But I was literally about to say that, right? So I think that really exemplifies the point here that in school, we're seen as the people who study hard. Like when you see a brown banker, when you see a brown lawyer or doctor, of course, we know how many brown doctors there are. Shout out mum. Again, that is one of the differences, I think, that it wasn't until Zayn Malik that a half Pakistani, half white guy was somehow cool. And then that changed a lot of how people spoke to me. But yeah, I do hope that the media, and by having conversations like this, black academics, black voices in all of those other spaces can be normalized. Because although there might be fewer, there still are a lot of black doctors, black lawyers, black doctors. So I think that the media doesn't do enough justice to show cool brown people, They're don't know if we can keep that in there or not, but it's a double-edged sword. Because when blacks are only shown as cool and athletic, that also puts it in people's minds as well, subconsciously, that, oh yeah, they're not as, do you see what I mean?
Part of the problem is that it's hard to get into those spaces in the first place. It's much easier to kind of be an entrepreneur, get in athletics, get into because there's more of us there. They know we're good in those areas. We've excelled in the past. We've excelled at music. We've excelled at sports. We've excelled at podcasting or whatever it is. These creative fields. That is where we've always been good at. So it's easier, and there's a lot of us there. So it's easier to create opportunities in those spaces. But if you're talking about finance, medicine, STEM, areas that are more dominated by white people or Asian people, not so much Asian people, but more so white people, it's harder to penetrate into those areas because there's less of us. And because there's less of us, it doesn't get portrayed as much because the concentration of talent is in those creative fields rather than in fields like I'm in right now. There's talent, but there's less of it.
As you said, like the blacks did excel in those fields. The South Asians did excel in medicine and those things. But I mean, even my mum said when she was in college, the lady said to her, like, what do you want to be when you're older? She said, a dentist. And she said, well, maybe a hygienist or nurse, and that was probably based on, exactly. So, she faced some of that, but we're so well established now that 40 years later, if a brown person says to you, I want to be a doctor, it's like, it's cliche. In the same way, if a black person says, I want to be a footballer, because in those industries, they're so well established.
But even getting into these sports is still difficult to get in. It will still be the top, 1%, 2% of people that don't, make no mistake about it. It's still competitive. Those people that you see, it's only the best of the best that make it. There are still some people struggling to get into those spaces or never make it.
It's very tough because the thing is, those industries like business, entrepreneur, music, sports, obviously black people have shown they can excel, but they're so competitive that there's probably like, for example, if you study and go to uni and study medicine, it's competitive, but it's not as competitive as playing for Arsenal. Shout out Bukayo Saka, British Nigerian, who we've got to have on the podcast soon. It's way more reliable, let's say, than, okay, I want to be a famous rapper or famous footballer. Studying is still, I would say, a safer bet. Let's say there is a young black Brit or anyone who does want to make it. You've made it. You're an extremely inspiring investment banker now, LSE graduate. You defied, let's say, a lot of the odds. What advice would you give to that young person who would want to follow in your footsteps?
Don't give up even when it gets hard. You have to go that extra mile to kind of set yourself apart.
Everyone connects with their cultures in different ways. By connecting more to the British culture, sometimes you're leaving behind the other culture. And that comes with a bit of, complexities that, it doesn't have to always be seen as one or the other.
Like, subscribe to the channel.
Let him know what you thought about this. Let us know where you're viewing from in the comments. Whether you're in Europe, Africa, America, we want to know. We want to hear what you think. And we will see you next time.